I had to get off early the other day. I was really busy that day. I actually was supposed to be busy today, and I was supposed to do it tomorrow, but I ended up not being busy today. So, I mean, not as busy. I still do stuff today, but I got a little bit of time, so that's all good. Um, but other than that, let's get into the video. Finish the video out, and then what we're gonna do next is synthetic man. Uh, or send me a comment. Tell me what you want me to react to next.
The Dreki, of which you fight multiple later, 2 enemies at once, really is the maximum that this camera style can handle. The game delivers boss fights pretty steadily throughout the campaign and open world, and I honestly enjoyed nearly all of them. There are beefed up mini-bosses scattered around, and there's these great optional berserker boss fights that can be very challenging. Some of these guys took me a couple hours to take down, and it forced me to get good. It was the best part of the game. If I had one criticism for the boss fights, it's that I wish there were more.
That's weird. I think the best part of the game is the story.
Puzzle elements involved. Having to use pieces of the environment or something like that. I always come back to God of War 1, where you had to stun the Hydras and then climb up to impale them so they stayed down while you went after the big guy up top. Stuff like that is fun and makes boss fights more than just block and attack encounters. Bosses have unique attacks that you have to adapt to, and one thing I love is that they made me think more about what runic attacks I wanted to use. See, in the last game, I complained about it giving me so many runic attacks when I can only use one for each runic slot. And none of it mattered anyway because the game was so broken.
I disagree. I don't think the game is broken. But I don't understand the argument. Of course you can only use one, but you have a bunch to choose from, right? And you can mix it up whenever you want. Do you want the game to only give you like one? Or I don't understand that. Somebody in the comments explain that to me.
This time, due to much better combat balance and better enemy design, I was thoughtfully exploring my options to pick the right runic attack for the situation, something I really enjoyed. Sometimes a runic attack I like using would leave me too vulnerable in a fight, so I'd switch it out. So the problem was never that there were too many runic attacks in the last game, it's that there were so many while feeling like it didn't matter in the first place.
Okay, that is completely subjective. I disagree.
This time, it does, and it feels good to have options, especially since it feels like I'm not breaking the game with any of them. The RPG elements have been toned down and slowed down in terms of how they're introduced. The whole green, blue, purple rarity system we see in every game today isn't plastered all over the armor page, so I'm actually looking at these different pieces instead of going directly to colors.
I don't know how I feel about that. I like the rarity. I like the different colors. It lets you know which one is better. But also, that's not entirely fair because each armor piece has a different, like you have luck, or you have, like this one on the screen has, greatly reduces damage taken when using a runic attack or relic. It has different modifiers like that.
Wonderful. Now I don't have to think Fortnite while playing God of War. I can just hear people complaining already. Where's my epic purple axe handle, bro?
Someone once said,
sorry, an ad.
being a stranger in a strange land is a curse. Whoever it was, they'd never been to Hollywood.
The biggest change is the removal of enchantments. Sweet Lord in heaven, they actually took out the enchantments. 2018 buried you in like hundreds of these things that gave you little stat boosts, and it was exhausting. And you couldn't sell them, so they just sat there. They're gone now, because we don't need to be thinking about equipable enchantments as we're figuring out the armor system.
Well, why not? You don't have to use them. you didn't have to use them. That's the thing. I liked them. They added a certain kind of flavor, and they helped you. But you didn't have to use them.
System and the combat. Instead, what they've done is consolidated all these enchantments into an amulet that you find much later in the game. It has 9 slots, only one open at first, where you can put enchantments that you start finding. And as you play the game, you'll be able to repair more slots to have more enchantments equipped. And there aren't dozens of crappy +2 strength enchantments lying around.
I agree with that. The crappy +2 stuff like that was kind of ridiculous.
They all have...
But there were better ones that, but I'd have to play 2018 again.
significant clear uses.
No, I'm gonna give one. Yeah, I agree. I agree with this. I like this system better. Plus, they can double up, and you can match them to increase the power.
Introducing this later in the game instead of in the beginning is a fantastic change. It doesn't feel overwhelming, it feels like a natural extension of this game's progression, and I enjoyed working with it. Being able to equip 3 enchantments of the same type to get a bonus perk was also a very nice touch. The only addition I don't care for much is all the different companion upgrades. You're given so many ways to buff the arrow attacks that I found it confusing, and ultimately I just stopped engaging it.
I didn't find the arrow attack confusing, but what I do, the arrow attack buff confusing, but what I do have a problem with is the trait didn't have much to upgrade. He didn't have much. The armor was just cosmetic. It didn't do anything, and 2 of the armors looked exactly the same. And I think they should have done more with Atreus in terms of armor and equipable armor.
In it, you're given too many too fast that it starts to feel meaningless.
Well, I agree, but I don't know what else they could do. You barely have Atreus for any length of time.
The inventory are appreciated. Now, whenever you open it, you are immediately notified of what can be upgraded or crafted, so you don't have to open everything individually searching for upgrade opportunities. Still, I don't like this armor system because it goes against every design principle that defined Kratos as a character. When they first started designing him for God of War 1, they started with a lot of armor, but eventually realized the more armor they took away, the more intense the character looked. Kratos is not a man that needs to be covered in armor. When he's stacked head to toe in cloth and metal like this, it hides the character design, and it's a real shame.
The armor is part of the character design, and you don't have to, again, you can get armor that had less coverage. You can get armor that had less coverage. You just choose to wear this so much armor.
Shame. That's why the most powerful moment in this game is when Kratos takes off his armor. He should look like this the whole game. I don't care how cold it is in Midgard. I mean, he's walking around like this in the beginning. Why not keep it stripped down?
You can
be exploring this world as Kratos, and the more armor I have, I feel like I'm not. And I need...
Why can't Kratos wear armor? If the argument... No. Why can't Kratos wear more armor? I don't see the point. Why can't he?
Some kind of motivation, because it's so easy to find yourself going on in this world, doing nothing due to how huge it is, and how many parts involve rowing your boat or climbing walls. And the map doesn't help things at all. I can't believe I never mentioned it in my first video, but this map is terrible. I know you're not going to have a GTA-style waypoint system that shows the path you need to take to your objective, but you at least need to allow me to zoom into the map to understand where I'm fucking going. What supervisor at Santa Monica looked at this map, saw how little it zooms in, and said, yeah, that's good, we don't need to go any further? It's like the designers don't want you to understand world traversal, and that makes the fast travel system much worse. Yeah, you still can't...
Yeah, you just kinda... I agree with this. You kind of have to remember where... You just kind of have to remember what everything is called when you fast travel there. But... Yeah, I agree.
can't fast travel from any point. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you need to get to another realm, you have to march your ass across the map to find a magic door, and then you can travel to another point in this realm or another realm. Yes, it's nice that we can use any gateway to go directly to other realms now, but why not go all the way? Why couldn't the dwarves just give Kratos a jewel that allows him to open a gateway wherever he is in the realm to start fast travel? I'll tell you why. Why? Because the developers are so in love with their own world that they can't bear the thought of players not wandering around in it for the maximum amount of time.
The image he's showing is Freya and Kratos going to get Freya's spirit back so she can go to other realms, right? As herself, not the Hawk. But it's Kratos telling Freya about what happened to his original child. This is really intense. I don't know. It's really interesting, and it's really good for Kratos and meaningful. I don't know why you would show this as a bad thing. But back to the doorway thing. I think they didn't do that because that would definitely have some story implications, and you could give it to him at the end of the game, but not during the game. That would have some serious story implications, and it would be like, and you would ask, why didn't it happen sooner?
Impossible.
That would still be the same at the end of the game, but you might be able to have an excuse. I don't know if it would actually work.
Coming back to the combat, runic attack cooldowns are harder to exploit. At least they are during the most important parts of the game. Mini-bosses and main bosses aren't massacred by just spamming constant runic attacks, and there are no broken companion abilities like the old Atreus electric arrows. You actually have to fight from beginning to end, and it's beautiful. I rarely ever felt like I made it through a late game encounter by just screwing around, and I never beat a boss by just stun-locking them with supers and companion attacks. Ragnarok makes you play well, and I have immense respect for it because of that. I really like most of the new enemy designs, even if a few of them really screw with the camera. The new big guys are fun, it's great to see more animal-like enemies, and having an enemy that you have to hunt down and kill before you can damage anyone else is a fun way to mix things up. I appreciate the variations of old enemies that appear, seeing how travelers might have a back attack this time around, or maybe they'll swing their sword up after it gets stuck in the ground. I enjoyed every encounter with the Hateful because it made me play well for so long. Everyone is suitably annoying and challenging and interesting in their own ways to make you feel good about finally killing them. Except the Wisps, they can fuck off. Wandering around...
I agree with that. The Wisp and the witches in 2018 and in this game, especially when they're in a group, they're fucking hassle to deal with.
Frozen Midgard, the canyons, and the jungle was the best experience I had in Ragnarok. I'd do a side mission at my own pace, find some gear or a new attack, solve a puzzle, and then run over to a boss fight for an hour. Then go out searching for another crazy fight, of which there are many. It became exciting to see what kind of loot I'd get after defeating an optional boss, because while I'm not a fan of loot-based games, and I criticize 2018 for being heavily loot-based, I can't...
That's subjective. I like loot-based games.
...deny that it feels good to find something nice after winning a good fight. That's the difference here. The fights are actually good this time. 2018 felt like a series of unsatisfying and/or broken combat encounters where the only joy to be found came from the loot drops. In Ragnarok, the big fights themselves are incredibly satisfying, so the loot feels like a reward and not compensation. I spent my days just wandering around looking for optional boss fights, avoiding the campaign because I knew...
You don't... So... this is the way he sounds like he's saying. He does like loot-based games. He just likes them done more like in God of War Ragnarok.
The moment I went back to it, something awful would be waiting for me.
This is like some
I'd
done
finally
well.
shrug my shoulders and say, okay, I'll see what's next in the campaign. And surprise, surprise, is a bunch of cutscenes and a terrible section where Atreus is in a bar fight. A section that actually made my girlfriend say, is this a joke? Are they laughing at us?
What? What? It's incredibly... Look. Thor is drinking again. Because his father had been on him this entire time. And he's letting down his daughter, and then he had to go back, and he had to do something for Odin. That, they, Thrud and Atreus had to go find Thor, and it's very story intensive, and it's very, I love it. And the bar fight, it's fun.
Okay, so let's stay with the combat a little more because I want to talk about an aspect of this game that has become very important to me. Something I talk about on this channel all the time. And that's player accountability, creative incentive, and clear communication of a game's core systems. 3 things that are guaranteed to lead even your most stubborn player into the fun zone. And what is the fun zone of God of War Ragnarok? Weapon variety, smart use of runic attacks and managing cooldowns, dodging and parrying, guard breaking, long distance targeting, and combos. Engaging in all this stuff is what makes the game fun, and not all your players are going to start engaging in it if they can just get away with random bullshit for most of the game. The big difference in my experience with 2018 going into Ragnarok is that I felt like the fun way to play was now the right way to play. Overall, combat just feels more interesting this time around. That's due to enemy balance, runic attack balance, new combat options, and I really came to like the different kinds of Spartan Rage.
Yeah, I really like the different kinds of Spartan Rages, and the fact that you can upgrade them. But I mostly just stuck with Fury. I like that it gave you different options for other people, but Fury I think is the best.
Choosing from the classic punch 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 to regain health, a quick burst of health without doing damage, or a charging heavy attack that gives health if it kills someone. And since combat is better tuned this time around, thinking about which one to have equipped was actually fun. Before I get into what I really like about the new combat presentation, I gotta mention something that was horribly disappointing. In the early game, I learned that if you finish a fight with very low health, you will recover some of it automatically. I thought, oh my god, they changed the health system, yes! See, I have a big problem with 2018's health system because you can play like crap in every fight and survive with barely any health, and then if you go into the next fight, you can just die right away and you restart that checkpoint with full health.
I'll continue to say this. Soft locking is a bitch, and I think this is great to avoid soft locking.
It's not like there's a ranking system like Bayonetta that punishes you for your deaths. You can just abuse it. So there's really no health resource reward for good defense. I was hoping they would restructure the game to have your current health level saved with the checkpoint, and then you'd have to work harder to get health in the next fight, finding pickups, using rage to recover health, etc. It's also a problem for runic attack cooldowns because they reset too. Let's say you finish a fight by using all your runic attacks, and then you go into the next fight and you have no runic attacks, so you gotta fight straight for a while. Well, just die and restart right there and get all your runic attacks back for free. It unfortunately leads you to being able to approach every fight the same way in the later game by opening big with runic attacks and then waiting for cooldown. It homogenizes combat encounters, and I'm really sad to see this hasn't been changed in Ragnarok.
I disagree. I still like the cooldown, but this is just his opinion.
Seeing the small recharging health made me think they had done it, but they didn't. But I can't pretend they've done nothing. There's actually a fantastic reward for smart defense in the skill tree. If you land consistent hits while also avoiding damage, you build up elemental damage with your weapon, a feature feature from the last game, but now when it maxes out, you can overcharge your weapon. Activating it stuns surrounding enemies, and then you unleash projectiles that do frost damage, like the old heavy runic attack from 2018 that was kinda busted, or you cause the blades to build up additional rage with every hit. I found myself excited whenever I got close to filling up the bar so I could power up and start wailing on the enemies, and I got pissed whenever someone hit me and I lost the charge before I could activate it. Good stuff. Fortunately, something that really helps is that you go quite a while without any heavy runic attacks, or at least I did. You're forced to legitimately play the game, being defensive, not relying on any kind of spam. And once you do start getting a lot of runic attacks, the enemies become balanced to be able to take a lot of punishment. So even though you are able to exploit the checkpoint system by instantly spawning with full health and runic attacks, at least that doesn't equal an easy win in most cases.
I thought enemies were too spongy. No, he said they were balanced, but I thought he said in the last game they were too spongy. I guess he means for the, even when you have runic attack, they're too spongy.
Where it did in
the last game.
Okay, so what are the combat improvements? I already mentioned how the game starts you with more options. That's important for early experimentation in a game like this. A big change in the combat presentation is in enemy weaknesses. We are shown early in the skill tree that frozen enemies take extra damage from blade attacks. Cool, weapon variety incentive. This also applies to burning enemies taking more damage from the axe. We have an early game mini-boss in the Huntress that lets us stun her by throwing the axe at her horns, getting new players into the habit of long-distance axe throwing, and capitalizing on enemy stun states. Energy shield enemies can be disabled by using runic arrows, but you can also use charged elemental attacks, runic attacks, and shield bash. Hexed enemies take extra elemental damage, which encourages the use of your spinning blade.
I hope he talks about the different shields, because those really come in effect, especially on different especially if you focus into the play style that they're meant to be played in.
Attack or charging frost on your axe. Some enemies protect their health bar in ways that are weak to different elemental attacks. You're given an early game choice of shield type, going with a tanky shield for steady defense, or a rewarding parry focus shield with a great counterattack ability. These are amazing ways to get players into experimenting with the tools they may be ignoring. In a change that I absolutely love, there are now tiers of skill use, and when you hit gold tier, you can insert a coin into that skill to enhance one of its properties. It's a really nice reward for using more than just the basic options available. So I like the changes to the skill tree, but I wish they didn't present the whole thing to you right away. It can be overwhelming, especially to a new player, to have 3 different categories, Axe, Blades, and Atreus, each with 3 different skill trees at the beginning of the game. I think you should be introduced to 1 set of skill trees each at first, and have the rest open up throughout the first hour. And I want to say thank you for allowing us to disable skills. Sometimes the evade skills really mess me up because they come out when I don't want it, and turning them off helps me in some fights. All of this, balance, combat options, clear weapon utility, mini-boss weak points, skill tree rewards, it turned me, someone who found 2018's combat to be generally boring and busted, into someone having a great time occasionally. Because it was never about what you can or can't do. I know that people do crazy combos in 2018, but I felt like that game failed at getting me interested in caring about combos in the first place. Ragnarok succeeds. Ragnarok makes great attempts at getting players into fun and effective playstyles. Maybe a little too much. I approve of the tutorial prompts. There are a lot of important mechanics to introduce, but these things tend to repeat themselves, and eventually you'll want to turn tutorials to minimal. You don't have to tell me over and over in one fight that hexed enemies are weak to elemental attacks.
You can just turn them off. But yeah, you can turn them off. But to be fair, this is... He might mean that, if you hadn't turned them off and they just yeah, that's what he means.
I got it. I definitely appreciate the addition of the flashing blue attacks that can be stopped with a shield bash. I never used shield bash in 2018. And this got me into using that attack much more, and now I really enjoy it. But it is very much a, hey, press this button now signal, which ends up feeling a bit dull after a while, and I think maybe there should be an option to disable it. Speaking of things that we should have the ability to disable, NPC hints. Your partner regularly yells at you, telling you to use your shield, telling you to parry an attack, stop standing still, attack an enemy at a certain time, and it's super annoying. I get it, you've got all kinds of players in this game. Yelling advice at them in the middle of combat can remind them of important things they should be doing. But for the love of God, let us disable it. You've got thousands of accessibility options in the menu, and you can't let us play without characters constantly telling us what to do. We've all seen this.
Can you really not turn it off? Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Clip, haven't we?
Oh my god, shut off!
You have its attention now! Don't lose it!
I would criticize him for saying, oh, it's an issue and you can turn it off, but if it's an issue for you and you can't turn it off, then I think that's an issue for you. Right?
Don't just stand there! Move!
Oh my god! I will
I need to
legit
get to
mute the
those
voices! Holy fuck, man!
I think that's a bit much. I mean, it's not gonna bother you that much.
That's it! Don't relent!
Oh fuck.
Parry that attack!
Oh my What is
See what I
this?
Yeah, that's pretty
I mean, you're playing pretty awfully. He wasn't really doing anything.
bad. But what's worse is the puzzle sections. Now, I'm on record for criticizing 2018's puzzles, and while I do think in Ragnarok they're still limited by the lack of platforming, attempts have been made to make puzzles more interesting this time around. Using the axe to freeze waterways and direct the water towards wheels to open doors, and the ability to string together runic arrows helps a lot of the puzzles feel like more than just throwing your axe at switches. So yeah, I praise the increase in puzzle variety, but my appreciation for these puzzles is frequently ruined by how often they appear. I like puzzles, okay? Survival horror is my favorite genre, and I love a puzzle that gets me thinking for 10 minutes about what to do. But not in every room, and not when none of them involve combat in an action game. Do people just not remember how much cool puzzle design was involved in the old games?
The Minotaur was bullshit, and it was extremely hard, but if you, extremely hard on the ground, but if you want to exploit him, you could just go up on the second floor, and he could do nothing. And the, button prompts, they were really hard, and if you lost, you just had to redo the whole thing over again. It was a pain in the ass.
The Minotaur boss wasn't just hitting him, you stunned him and made your way up to the launcher to impale him. There was a part where you had to protect a guy from killing himself while you were fending off monsters. You killed centaurs in a magic circle to unlock a door. You had to move a prisoner up a ramp for a sacrifice while enemies came at you. There was an elevator that would crush you if you didn't kill all the enemies in time. You did executions on sirens to use their voice to break open doors. God of War 3 had a cool section where zombies walk into a wall of energy and convert into large monsters, so you have to keep them away from it while fighting the big guys. This stuff makes the combat more than just strike and defend, with combat-free puzzles in between.
But I see nothing wrong with strike and defend.
It creates a larger experience.
I agree with that. It does create a large experience. But it's fine with what it has now, I think. Alright. I don't think he's saying what the combat now is wrong. You just need to add more. And adding more I would agree with. But what you have now is good.
It actually being a shorter and linear game. I think it would have been cool to see some kind of puzzle where you have to juggle.
A shorter and linear game. It's linear. It's not an open world game. It's quasi open world.
enemy over a certain area for a while, and maybe this enemy has to be burning, but it dies quickly. So you have to figure out a way to get it burning with your spinning blade and then launch it and keep it in the air burning before it dies to open a door. Some kind of puzzle that actually teaches combat skills, not just stopping everything to be in a quiet room for several minutes figuring out where to throw your axe. Without combat in any puzzle rooms, the game turns into a slog. God of War Ragnarok has a pacing problem. As I stated before, large amounts of the campaign and some side missions have you fighting a small group of enemies, 2 if you're lucky, and then solving a puzzle in the middle of a bunch of walking, talking, and cutscenes. Alfheim is particularly bad about this, with constant rooms asking you to throw your axe at crystals to open
Cutscene. I mean,
This game,
ad.
you're not ready for it.
open doors. Imagine if instead of all these puzzles, they'd spent more time and resources on better designed combat spaces and some actual vertical combat options. They seem more interested in presenting traversal puzzles to the player than interesting combat scenarios, and the result is that puzzles that should be making me happy because they're well designed are having the opposite effect. I just want to experience the combat some more, but there's a locked door in my way and I gotta spend several minutes trying to figure it out. And right before I do actually figure it out, a character just blurts out the solution. Completely unwarranted.
Think my
I-
stick to the wood up there.
Nothing ruins a puzzle like being told the solution right as you're about to get it yourself. Other games have done this way better. I think it was Uncharted where if you need a hint, you could press square and your friend would direct your attention to something. It would be great if they could rework it to be like that, because knowing the puzzles are going to be spoiled for me definitely lessens my drive to want to replay this game. As if I would ever replay Ragnarok. I played 2018 once when it came out, and then 3 more times preparing for my original video. I played it twice on hard, once on extreme, and again on extreme New Game Plus, which is admittedly a much better experience. My plan going into Ragnarok was to play it on the Give Me No Mercy difficulty and then extreme, Give Me God of War. I wanted to get 2 solid playthroughs under my belt for this video, maybe 100%ing one of those playthroughs. But after suffering through so many unskippable cutscenes,
I don't just literally. This is Atreus and Kratos talking about the next move, and Atreus gets upset because I won't spoil it, but it's really story intensive.
which last hours, boring as hell tasks where characters
I'm gonna spoil this one because this one is this one makes me angry. This one is where Kratos and Brock go get the spear, right? And then this is where Brock finds out that he died once, he doesn't have all its soul bits, and then that is story relevant for later. It's really it gets your heart going because Kratos showed that he cares about someone, without being prompted, and then it hits you really good. It's good. It's a good Kratos moment.
Ask you to go fetch rocks for them so they can fix machines, and especially the god-awful Atreus levels, which also take up hours. I refuse to play this game again. And it's sad because I would really like to just go around fighting all the bosses again, but not if it means I have to go through all that crap. A New Game Plus mode will not help this much because even if it lets us skip cutscenes, there's still hours and hours of walkie-talkie climbing nonsense and unbearable Atreus levels. You think New Game Plus is going to come with an option to skip the Atreus level?
What's wrong with walking and talking if you get character development? I don't see a problem with. If I'm getting character, that's awesome. I want more character.
I don't think so. Maybe if I liked the story more, I could tolerate it. But Atreus is simply too much for me. To like the other characters, Brock and Sindri had some interesting developments. It was very sad to lose Brock and see Sindri become consumed by hate and ultimately be the one to kill Odin. It was actually a compelling part of the story. The epilogue scene saying goodbye to Brock was moving. Freya dealing with her trauma of being married to Odin was good to learn about. I became interested in Freya's forgiveness of Kratos, and it was wonderful to see them become partners. Actually, the parts playing with Freya are way better than the ones with Atreus. She feels like a much more natural companion. The drama in Thor's family was interesting to me. Really, anything involving anyone other than Atreus, I found myself enjoying. But Kratos' part in all this, it's still very underwhelming to me. In most of the story, he's relegated to a Mad Max role, where he's not actually the main character in his movies.
Yes, he is. He isn't. He has a lot. Most of the decisions in the game, it decided by Kratos. That's just a fact.
It's about the people he meets. And that's not a bad way to tell a story, but Kratos is such an interesting character that we've come to love and want to engage with more. I'm really disappointed to see him take a back seat to most of the story. He has his moments, yeah, and ultimately his journey ends up being more entertaining as he eventually becomes leader of the army to attack Asgard. That's a great destination to reach. Kratos never saw himself leading an army again. But the journey itself to get there, I don't know. I'm just not into it. Like I said, this is the Atreus story. Atreus drives the plot.
It's really not. Kratos drives the story very much more than any other character.
There's actually this great moment where after we find out Tyr isn't who we thought he was, and Brock dies, Kratos and Atreus just leave. They're like, we're out, no more of this. And then you go back to your home.
It's because Kratos really liked Brock, and
land and go hunting like everything is fine. I love this moment, and I wish there was a secret ending achievement somehow, where you just choose to never go back and let the world burn.
No, that wasn't the point. The point is Kratos, he does care, but he cares so much, he can't go kill the gods. He doesn't want to do that. This is he's flashing back to just God of War 1. He's so angry he can't deal with it. He wants to disassociate. Right? Then he realizes he can't ignore what's going on.
Missed opportunity. Like the last game, the best moments for Kratos is when he's doing something that reminds him of his much more interesting adventures from the other games. He talks to Mimir about his brother Deimos, and when he's forced to strangle Heimdall to death, hearing him say monster as his final word, his eyes turning black, is a powerful moment because it brings us back to the person Kratos is on the inside. That darkness that he's trying his hardest to leave behind him. That's probably the most effective moment in the whole game.
I have been falling back into my old ways.
Heimdall is a very God of War 3 style boss. Super arrogant, teasing Kratos, pushing him to the limits of his patience. And near the end of the fight, when you think you've won, Kratos rushes in, and that old God of War fan in me was screaming for him to just rip his head off. That's what I wanted. I got really excited.
Why? Kratos doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to kill gods anymore. He doesn't want to be that person anymore.
That's the darkness of the old Kratos that's inside me. But he only impales his arm, pinning him to the wall, giving him a chance to surrender. The adrenaline was pumping through me, and
Yeah, because Kratos wants to become a better person. He doesn't like all the killing. But Heimdall forces him to kill him because he threatens Atreus. He threatens his family.
I sat there anxiously waiting to see what would happen next. I tried to calm myself, as Kratos was, resisting the urge to kill him. I was trying to take the higher path with Kratos. When Heimdall refuses to yield, threatening Atreus, Kratos rips his arm off. A brutal punishment for disobedience, but still not murder. He's doing whatever he can to refrain from killing another god. But when Heimdall comes at him again, Kratos understands that there is no other option, suffocating the life out of Heimdall, giving him some kind of victory by revealing to him the Kratos that he was and probably always will be deep down. This is great stuff.
Okay.
Centered around
I take back what I said.
these themes would make me very happy.
I
Sadly,
jumped the gun.
most of the game's story is centered around our unlikable son that fucks everything up and all the side characters.
That isn't true. Kratos is in most of the story. Trade sections probably only take like 4 or 5 hours out of the game. It's a 70-hour game.
Eventually ending with us waging war on Asgard to save the realms, and it's all just kinda okay. It's a noble cause, but it wasn't very exciting by this point. The fights in Asgard to get to the end are pretty unremarkable, and I think I was just getting tired of the combat by that point, so there's that too. The Odin and Thor boss fights are genuinely fun, but they're spoiled by one too many checkpoints. And as we know, checkpoints spawn you with full resources, so you can empty 6 runic attacks into them right away when you load a checkpoint. It makes the fights less interesting and challenging than they could have been. The best part of the final chapter is seeing Kratos become the general. Seeing everyone refer to him as their leader is a moving scene, because Kratos never saw himself taking this position again, and now the whole world is depending on him for their survival, instead of him being on a mission that destroys the world like he was in God of War 3. It's great character development. It's why I ultimately like this game's story a little more than 2018's, because despite all the terrible focus on Atreus, by the end, Kratos is in a very interesting place, and I like that. He says goodbye to his son in a scene that is incredibly touching. It almost brought a tear to my eye. So where does that leave us? The story of Ragnarok is over. It's a huge game, it was enough story for 2 games, but they wanted to wrap it all up in this one giant adventure.
How would you make it 2 games?
Was it too
Where would you end
much?
it?
I don't know. I'm not used to having to play a game for a week to complete it, so I'm tempted to say yes. But I also did a lot of side content, spent hours in optional boss fights, and I intentionally...
If you're waiting for me to give an example where to stop the game, I don't know where. The game doesn't really have a good stopping point like that. Like for example, Justice League, the Snyder Cut. That has a good stopping point. This one doesn't really, because the story isn't paced out like that. And the Whedon cut, it allowed you to, because the movie wasn't finished, the Snyder Cut, they added stuff on and stuff like that. So I'm saying stuff a lot, but I think mostly I'm saying something.
Intentionally put off finishing the campaign because of the Atreus levels, so maybe it's not too much. It probably depends on how you experience it. Personally, I feel like the ability to go on side missions detracts from the urgency of the plot. Odin is this great threat that we need to assemble an army to stop, and Kratos is upset about his son disappearing, but hey, why don't you relax for a bit and go run errands for ghosts? It's so weird. And I guess it also speaks to my preference for linear action games. I always felt the momentum of the story in the original God of War games, because you're going in one direction. You never took 5 hours out of your day to go fart around in a desert on your mission to kill Ares or Zeus.
That's very subjective, and I disagree wholeheartedly.
I did feel good about raising the dam and restoring water to the canyons, though. That was a side mission that felt like it had purpose and a real effect on the world. If only this was a linear action game and that was just part of the story. Now that I've beaten the campaign, seen the epilogue, found most of the Asgardian wreckage, beaten 8 of the Berserker boss fights, including a few fights versus the camera, I think I'm done. The wreckage fights have been very underwhelming. I feel no drive to find new gear. The remaining side quests involve a lot of empty wandering around, and yeah, I may go look for a few more boss fights in my spare time, but honestly, I'm just getting tired of the navigation. I already mentioned it, but the inability to fast travel at any time is really hindering this experience for me. I got lost in a part of Vanaheim up here, and I decided to make my way back to a gateway because I couldn't find one up here. Maybe there is one here and I didn't find it. I couldn't find my way to the undiscovered area, so maybe it's up there. But because I didn't find one here, I had to run all the way back down the map, running in circles a couple times because I got turned around, and I spent like 10 minutes just running around in the jungle trying to get to a gateway. To do what? Go run around some more? That's when I officially soured on this game. It's so pretentious, they expect me to be happy retreading these dead environments looking for treasure or something. Unable to fast travel anywhere unless I make a 5-minute trek back. It's insulting. But at least it's over. There is no reason at all to replay this game, so I can be done with it. I can look back on my fond memories of boss fights when I actually said, wow, I love this, and the touching moments that happen in the story, the beautiful environments, and I can try my hardest to forget nearly everything else. God of War Ragnarok was the most complicated game I've ever played or talked about. It is better than 2018 in many ways. I'd say it's a better game overall. But the major flaws this game has in certain areas, combined with the incredibly bloated campaign story moments
the campaign is not bloated.
With unskippable walkie-talkie cutscenes and 5...
I think, as long as we're getting character, there's nothing wrong with it. Why don't you like getting character?
Hours of it.
You're learning more about them.
Are, in my opinion, unforgivable. The good stuff keeps me from saying it's a bad game. Hell, in the end, I never even said the last game was bad. It just had a lot of bad stuff in it. This game isn't bad either. It's half really good and half really bad. The good stuff is better than it was in 2018, but the bad stuff is way worse. The incredible potential this game shows is brought down at nearly every turn, and that's what I call ruined. Thank you for watching this video. It's been an...
Sorry, Bert. Tell me what you think in the comments. I think he's wrong. Or I think you should talk more about the story, and there's nothing wrong with walkie-talkie sections as long as you're getting character. And you're always getting character. But, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and thank you. And thank you to... whoever. Sorry, disconnected. But thank you for the people that were watching. Have a great day.